Welcome to the Living Connected podcast. I'm your host, Mallory Meyer. I'm a multi-six-figure online entrepreneur, founder of White Wolf Reiki, and creator of the Frequency Business Mastery School. I weave together the metaphysical with the science of the subconscious mind and timeless business principles to help you take your passion for serving and empowering others full time. I'm not just here to teach you how to build a profitable and aligned business, but to invite in more authenticity, awareness, clarity, and certainty in what, who, and how you serve. In return, to generate more sales as you cultivate greater confidence and wealth through deeper self-sovereignty and advocacy, inviting in a trauma-sensitive approach to protocols and processes in our marketing and selling as we honor each client's humanity in the process of living more connected. This podcast is here to connect you further to your self-mastery for business, your lifestyle, and of course, your mindset. Join me on my mission to uplift and elevate the collective to love and light. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it has been a hot minute since I've been back. And honestly, maybe I did bite a little bit too much off when I thought heading into a month of travel, starting up a podcast was a great idea. But needless to say, I so appreciate your patience in this unfoldment of today's hot seat coaching session with the beautiful Noa. Just to offer some highlight reel about what's been happening behind the scenes since my last episode. At that point, I was in Maui, came back, and went to San Diego for a business retreat. Spent some time there for a few days, and then quickly came back home only to repack to spend a week in Panama. And that was an adventure in itself. But overall, in all these three different destinations, one of the biggest common themes was in shifting our environment and really looking at this usually as a contributor and a factor, especially when I talk about neurolinguistic programming. Our environment is the last piece of change that we want to be making, where our identity is the top. But needless to say, in shifting the environment, it really offered a new perspective and a new lens in all the inner work that I've been doing, in all the growth that's been unfolding, but also just being able to see things differently, to have a deeper, not just connection with myself, but appreciation in all that's in my current environment, as I was feeling quite stagnant before taking off. There's always this new level of a shift in my frequency and even expansion when I come home. Which is also why you have heard me say before, prioritizing experiences and travel in my life are a priority for rediscoveries and new awareness. I'm going to be sharing a solo episode in the coming week just to dive into this a lot deeper, because today's episode is very much again focused on Noa's hot seat coaching session. And Noa applied to come and receive this session as a female empowerment guide who was really struggling with niching down even more than what she thought was already her niche, and being able to really figure out what was the full transformation as well as who was she speaking to help hone in and get a lot stronger and confident in her own messaging. We unpack a lot. Again, this is a work in progress of holding these sessions and trying to dial them in as best as possible. But you'll hear from Noa the feminine strength that really started to come forward and evolve through the questions that I was asking her, and also her appreciation of having so many questions addressed as she gets so lost in her own brain with her thoughts to bring forward a clearer picture. And also a commitment that she was going to make for the next 90 days through the clarity that came forward in this session. I also just want to highlight before diving into her session how common niching down is for individuals and how much of a struggle. So often when individuals do come and clients work with me, there's so much fear and worry and resistance to niche down because they don't want to not be accessible to everyone. They don't want to lose anyone. But ultimately, in having such a large breadth in your marketing and in your messaging, you're already losing out. And if you're currently operating a business, yet you aren't reaching 100K, one of the reasons is probably because you aren't niched down enough. Individuals need to come to your page and understand so clearly at such a rapid speed who it is that you're serving and how you can help solve their problem. And if you aren't able to identify that yourself internally and be able to communicate that and articulate that clearly, there is going to be a gap and they are going to go to someone else where they can find that result and that solution through, again, their messaging, their marketing, their positioning, and their offer. Of course, as you evolve, as you start to generate more sales in your business, here is an opportunity where you can broaden your horizon and who it is that you are serving. But not only can I attest from my own experience, but in others with the clients that I serve, is when we're able to really identify the who, everything else starts to flow because there's so many specific examples that they can draw upon. I'm so passionate about this only because I have struggled with it in my own development with my business. So I will likely do an episode again on this specifically, just to not take away from this episode in itself. I hope you enjoy it, and here is Noa.
Hello, Noah. Thank you so much for being here on the Living Connected podcast and taking the time to be so vulnerable and open to receive this little mini hot seat coaching session. Before we dive into things, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit more context into who you are, how you serve, and even just share with us a little bit about your business.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and I feel really honored to get any sort of coaching from you in this way. So thank you for having me. And right now, I would call myself a female empowerment coach and healer. I think a part of the reason why I'm doing this with you right now is because I actually struggle to kind of put myself in a label. But I will say that the way that I work with women right now is on a very energetic level, on a very spiritual level, but also in a mindset level. So I like to kind of combine the spiritual side of things and very much the embodiment side of things and somatics, along with mindset work, because I find that the two of them combined are just magic. And it's what has propelled me to where I'm at right now in my business, which is still very much a starting point. But I've seen so much personal growth by embodying these two things for myself. And it's what I love to give to others as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for, like I mentioned, being here and this gorgeous work that you share. Obviously, being a huge fan myself of mindset and somatics, there's so many incredible shifts that can take place. So just to kind of get a little bit more context, I love how you positioned yourself as a female empowerment guide and healer here. So just to let us know a little bit deeper, what specifically does that really look like in the individual, that who it is that you're serving? Where would they be when they come to you?
That's a great question. I think that the person that I'm serving is kind of like the version of me that I was maybe a year ago. Kind of lost in my own sauce, as I like to say, like with a lot of potential energy that I didn't really know where to put. Someone that knows that they have a zest for life and that they desire greatness and a lot of happiness and fulfillment, but don't exactly know what to do to get there or what they want to really commit to in terms of maybe a career or even something like a hobby or just something that brings them joy. And that could be because of low self-confidence, possibly a trauma background, or just feeling generally unworthy of bringing in a lot of abundance. I found that that's where I was before I started working with a coach, and everything really opened up for me when I was able to receive that kind of help. And so I think that's who I'm mainly targeting right now.
Okay, gorgeous. And you spoke to a little bit about where you're taking them. So, even more so to hear from you when they work with you, your clients that are in that place, that version of you yourself, and like talking about those characteristics that you did a year ago, where do they get to be by the time that they've completed working with you?
Mm. They get to be embodied in a spirit of abundance first and foremost, and a feeling of worthiness and a feeling of like really deep knowing that they can create change for themselves. Um, I would also say that confidence is something that has come up a lot in my coaching, and it's what I work on a lot with my current clients. So I think just overall, like a heightened sense of self-confidence, which comes from like knowing yourself and knowing how your mind works with your feelings, having that really strong sense of knowing and understanding yourself or themselves.
And so, even like in knowing and understanding themselves, having this heightened sense of confidence, this embodiment with abundance, what's the impact of that for them to unfold?
The impact is, there goes my earpod. The impact is having the chutzpah, as I would like to say, to go after their desires and go after their dreams and know that they're capable of creating it. I think it's easy for a lot of people to think that their ideas are invalid, but when you actually embody the confidence and knowing that you actually can create things for yourself, then you have more of a desire and you have more of a motivation. So maybe motivation is the word that I'm looking for. Yeah, I think that's what's coming to me right now, but it does feel a little bit foggy. Like it feels very vague, and that's kind of what I'm working on right now is trying to figure out like within all of that, what is the niche there and like what is the full transformation, which I feel like those two things are linked.
Absolutely. Like you've been speaking with a lot of clarity, to, like, at least in my opinion, of how you're speaking about where someone's at. Obviously, we can untangle a little bit more pieces about where they're going and that full transformation to be less quote unquote like fluff and more
Yeah.
very succinct, tangible words. So, right now, when you just think about like what you've shared with me too, what do you find to be like the real challenge in getting really specific in that language for yourself?
What is the challenge? It does feel like fluff in a way, even though it feels very true to me and it feels very clear at the same time. It kind of feels like it's hard to conceptualize. Like if I were to bullet point what you're going to get out of working with me, something like heightened sense of confidence sounds great, but it's hard to conceptualize. So I think just like getting specific on seeing like what exactly the nitty gritty in people's lives will change is hard for me because it feels very vague.
Yeah. And so when you're just mentioning like that nitty gritty, kind of like what will change in their lives, is that kind of the piece specifically that's unclear when you're trying to conceptualize that? Or is it more of that where they're going? Or is it a bit of both even?
I think it's probably a bit of both, because I'm very multi-passionate in that, you know, I work with feelings, I work with somatics, I work with mindset and all of these things. So I guess those are all like in the avenue towards one thing. But I'm not sure how to like formulate that nice little package of the one thing that it's leading you towards, because I find that this work helps people with so much in their life, like career, relationships, just like general life satisfaction, and also overall health and well-being. So it's a little bit hard for me to get specific when I feel like it's all of these things at once.
Completely. So one question that I have for you here is like when you think about even just creating like a unique selling position, like your USP is usually how I'll kind of reference it. Call it like your niche statement, offer statement, quote unquote. What in your mind is like, how do you define that? And what's the importance of that for you in creating something like that? What does that get to ultimately bring forward for your clients?
So a unique selling position, would that be kind of like a tagline or?
Yeah, exactly. So when I think about it, like in my business right now, my USP, quote unquote, kind of thing is like I help energy healers build and scale a profitable and aligned business. So when you think about something like formulating that specificity that goes into it, when you're thinking about who it is that you're helping, who it is that you're kind of selling to, what does that get to really cultivate for your potential audience with like still regarding all of this, like all the things that you said, like people have money issues, people have relationship things to tap into. What does it still get to do for them in seeing your USP?
Well, I think that it creates like a, how would I say this? Like a firm sense of feminine strength almost. That might not be the right words, but I'll workshop it a little bit. Like right now, I would say as a tagline, something like I help highly sensitive, multi-passionate women turn doubt into desire.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
And what is that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Super clear and like the actual like self-doubt to desire. These multi-passionate women you've clearly identified. What does that really like, for one, to kind of two questions here. What does that statement in itself get to do for your audience?
It's such an interesting question that you're asking. Like, I'm like, I've never thought about it in that way. What does that get to do for my audience? I guess I think strength is the word that's coming to me the most right now, is feeling like strong and confident in knowing that whatever you do put energy into, that it's fruitful, and like I guess a sense of calm that comes with that too, like turning doubt into desire, kind of like turning on the fire.
Yeah. And that like you had previously mentioned, that strong feminine kind of energy with it. Really, it's almost like I truly see a flame from like our womb space being reignited through that. So there's like a strength, there's this calmness. Is there anything else that you feel like comes to the surface when someone comes to your page and they witness and read that for themselves? What gets to unfold and what gets to happen?
Yeah, I think two things are coming to mind right now. Like self-expression and authenticity is a really big part of how I market myself as a coach right now. And just kind of letting all the walls down and understanding that like your authenticity is truly your gift, and cultivating that authenticity by sharing it with the world more is how you find that fire. So I think that authenticity and also that feminine empowerment side of things, I've been doing so much like research into just more feminine concepts and like spiritual feminine concepts and how they play a role in how women in modern society are so downplayed and so held back by just like the way that we have learned women should be and to be, and how we've cut off like a very spiritual and like body connected space with our feminine energy. And I think that those things are really intertwined. So I think that authenticity, that feminine strength is another way to put that. If that makes sense.
I totally get it. And I resonate so deeply too about like conditions and like ways of which it's kind of been manufactured and how we need to show up, but then at the same time losing sight of what's innately like that feminine power, the empowerment in itself, like tapping into the authenticity, because it's just kind of looking at the areas and conditions and programs, patterns that have just been placed before us. So almost like unveiling this new sense of someone through that work.
Yeah, so, I like that word that you just used, actually. That like did something for me, like unveiling.
I don't even know. I haven't used that word in a while. So I feel like it's specifically intended for you as to channeling why it just wanted to come through. But definitely like you holding that space to unveil like this new level, and whether it's like the level of abundance, level of worthiness. So still thinking about that initial statement and where you're at with that. When you think about like knowing, of course, like tapping into the niche kind of issue today, is there anything specifically still coming forward that is unclear and like looking for specificity from what you already just massaged out?
I mean, that like unveiling concept, honestly, just like did a lot for me. I feel like that's a big part of what it is, but still unclear, I think, is how to translate that concept into, I guess, marketing, which might be a whole separate thing, but kind of like earlier when I felt like everything sounds very fluffy, like how to make these things not feel fluffy, I think is where I get stuck.
Yeah. So marketing would be a completely different tangent just in talking about the process that it would take someone. But one thing that I still would love to get a little bit of clarity for you on is that aspect where you mentioned like you leading them from like self-doubt to desire. And almost like what we were tapping into earlier, what's really all these like impacts of having more confidence, of I also made a note around like bringing in more of that abundance in themselves. And so we can really start to, at least for yourself here, chunk down a little bit of allowing yourself to lean into like a specific result in a way where it doesn't feel so fluff of like just desire, but what that from the results that you've already witnessed with the clients that you've held space for, what's something that you really want to stand behind and that you really want to become almost like that brand authority in. At least when people come, they're like, okay, this is very clear, like what Noa offers for me and like where she can take me. And if anyone's ever talking about this is what I'm struggling with, it could always just be like, I know someone that can, again, take you there, but you know that you have this like beautiful realm of modalities and ways of which you can bring them there. But it's getting very concrete behind that result and building your beliefs behind that. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had struggled for a while to figure out what the end result is, because it felt like, how do I decide what an end result is when there are like endless possibilities? But yeah, I think that's probably just going to take a little bit of like sitting down and putting my mind to it. Like, what are the things that I see my clients coming out of my coaching doing and feeling? Which in general, I think is just like more overall happiness, but I can get more specific with it.
So yeah, it's really like, for one, like when we think about like where they're at and like some of the things that you described already within yourself, really kind of looking at even like some of those intake forms that you receive, like what's the language that your clients are looking at or sharing with you, at least to say, this is where I'm at. And even if there's like a piece of like, if you wanted to include it within like some of your marketing, like I help individuals like rein in deeper confidence so they can invite in more meaningful desires into. And then are you finding, and this is like, we can still talk about this a bit, but really when you're thinking about like what you're known for and almost like that reputation that you've already built with clients. And obviously, there's an array of different desires that can unfold. Is there any common theme that you're starting to recognize in individuals as they step away from working with you?
Yes, I would say I see my clients becoming much more cognizant of their own thoughts
Mm-hmm.
when they come up, and being able to question and detach from them more on their own.
And what gets to happen through detaching from it and bringing more awareness into their thoughts?
I think they feel a sense of overall like relief and comfort
Mm-hmm.
in not being so stuck in their own mind or in their own uh like anxiety.
Okay. So even like that word anxiety there, are they having a lot of anxiety initially when they start to work with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of, or do you feel like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to know, when someone comes in, let's say at like a scale of 8, high anxiety, where would they be when they walk away on a scale of 1 to 10 again after working with you? 0 being like 1, 0 being the lowest.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say for each person, but definitely more in like the 1 to 3 scale.
Beautiful. So even in that sense, tapping into this niche of allowing like alleviating some anxiety and levels of
Hmm.
anxiety with individuals through this work. And that's part of like marketing relief and comfort from being stuck is in your marketing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that happens in relieving now some of this anxiety that they're having? What gets to unfold?
Yes. I'm struggling with figuring out a way to say it, but for example, I have a client who has landed her dream job because she actually like built up the confidence to go after it. And I have another client who um like got the courage to move out and like build a new life for themselves. So I'm trying to think about what the common theme is, or like how I would talk about that, kind of like leveling up in a way.
Yeah, like this new identity that's kind of unfolded for them to start to be so deeply like embodied in that they
Yeah.
get to receive those experiences that they've always essentially desired to have, like you said in your statement too.
Yeah, like really stepping into their higher self, more abundance, and like higher level experiences, like, you know, moving or a new job.
Mm-hmm. So knowing how like unique it can be for each individual and how they describe and define an experience for them, what would be an adjective perhaps that you would want to invite in front of experience?
Mm, maybe. This is such a good question. Like the word higher comes to me, but that's not the right one. I'm trying to think of what would work better there. Is anything coming to you?
There's a few words. I am envisioning your clients a bit when you think about, even if you were to drop in and be like, what does the client, if they've shared it with you, or even something that's come up in the session that's kind of like near the end of your time together with someone, when we're really tapping into like that feeling after working with you, what does that get to be? What comes to the surface for those clients?
A sense of soul and mind alignment.
Okay. So alignment even could, alignment's still a pretty broad word, but even when we're thinking about alignment of experiences or like aligned experiences, what's like another word just to kind of get like the ball rolling there?
Mm. Like all the words are gone.
It could come. There's also thinking about it in the lens of, okay, they've had now this beautiful opportunity of like healing, of more embodiment, and like obviously there's so many different aspects that we talked about, but really looking at it as, okay, now there's an experience to come forward for them that it could also like be either an adjective before experience or something following the word experience.
Mm-hmm.
Of like that blah 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 that is an extension to like the impact of the results almost. Again, when we think about, okay, now that I've like felt so much more confidence and clarity in who it is that I'm like being and what it is that I'm here to offer, I now get to extend this and share this with et cetera, kind of thing.
Yeah. The word grounded is coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like I need a word that's a mixture of like zesty and fiery, along with like a sense of calm and like being, you know, like planted and grounded.
Yeah. So it's more like grounded experiences that get to come into their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, like the intention behind that word grounded, like you just said, is like very calm. It's like very like trusting in that calmness.
Trusting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How are you feeling just to check in right now? And this whole like level of like a statement with your niche and like really envisioning where they're at and where they're going.
It feels good to like think it through for sure. It's still like there's still a little bit of a block just because it's like all unfolding in my own mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like hard to think of words when you're put on the spot. But it does feel more clear just actually in the way that you ask the question. Like it's not only about what are you going to feel coming out of working with me, but it's what are you going to feel and what is that going to do for your life? Like what kind of results are you going to see that are tangible? So just that simple question is like much clearer for me to think about this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And truly like just elevating that possibility within like when you think about that niche, because when you get very like clear and behind essentially like your belief behind this result, that it gets to be something unique for each individual, but it's still something I trust that I can guide people to in experiencing for themselves. That's really where like the more that you show up in your content, you can speak to that process of how you do that. So your niche is very clear, but it also gets to open that door of curiosity for people when they read that. And let's say it was the word of grounded experience. It's really nice to say, what's the type of grounded experience that you can create or that gets to be part of my journey with you, almost just learning more, like that open door permission.
Yeah. And maybe like providing specific examples of what that's looked like for other people.
Absolutely. Is there any kind of social proof that you do in your marketing right now?
Right now, a little bit. Yeah, I like to share some client wins and like mindset breakthroughs and things like that. Yeah, I love that.
And then do you feel like, and then does it tie into when you're thinking about still like that USP, that it's almost just like, and this is where they've really been able to like going back into like that result of whatever that grounded experience could be like for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think like the more that I get to see from them, that the more that will come together, but it definitely feels like aligned with the way I'm describing it right now with the things that I see in my clients.
Okay. So just before we kind of wrap up this session and like obviously speak to like what you do, just to kind of go back into like these three specific questions around like when you think about who your client is and where they're really starting their journey with you, whether we want to call it a frustration, a problem, a pain point, what comes forward for you as to like where they're at?
First off, some level of anxiety. Also a lack of motivation based off of like not knowing what to put energy towards. And also a general sense of either conscious or subconscious unworthiness to actually create change in their life.
Okay, beautiful. And then in kind of stepping into alleviating that anxiety, creating much more like deeper motivation within themselves and worthiness, where does that get to take them?
It gets to take them to knowing themselves really deeply in a way that makes it clear for them what kinds of experiences they want to be moving towards and why it's worth it.
What do you like when you think about the client on the other side, just like maybe coming to your page? I know you're on Instagram, so what or who do you really want to buy from you? If you were to kind of describe that individual, who is it that you really lights you up after every session and like makes you feel so expanded? If you were to define that individual, where are they at? What do they look like? Not like physically, what do they look like, but really just tapping into where are they going and what are they really looking to accomplish?
Great question. A couple of my clients are coming to mind. Women who are open to their minds and also open to explore their feelings at the same time. Women who, even if there's like a level of anxiety or a level of unworthiness, who still have this, like, maybe it's not a fire yet, but this tiny little spark inside them that knows that they're here for a higher reason and that they're here to enjoy their life and make it fulfilling. And also women that enjoy self-work and want to see changes in their environment, internally and externally.
And for you to even like take that a little bit further, when you mentioned the word like fulfilled life, how do you define a fulfilled life?
Oof. A fulfilled life is one that you wake up and you're like, fuck yes, I'm so happy to be alive. I'm so happy to be in my body, so happy to be exactly who I am. And, you know, like I feel confident and ready to take on whatever the world has to throw at me today because I know that I'm working towards something that I love.
And so even as you describe that, for me, like in how you're so succinct again, in like speaking about that experience, that meaning to you and bringing people along for that as well, you just showing up and sharing, I'm so like honored and grateful to be in this body, to have this day, to have my life, and the fulfillment that arises from it, in a sense, is like not just the embodiment, but also that energetic frequency being shared with those witnessing, I desire that life and Noah's living that life. And so really starting to witness again, yes, we can kind of maybe be constrained to words in our USP, but there's so many beautiful ways that we can show up and speak to that niche just through the language of what it is that we're like when we think about where we're bringing people and that result that they get to experience in such a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that energetic component is huge.
For sure. So for your kind of takeaway, I know we've flushed out a little bit, but there was still like some words that you really wanted to like simmer with and like resonate a little bit deeper more on like what's possible. And even if it's a feeling is instrumental, obviously, and like where we want to be guiding people, but what really gets to happen when they are embodied in that feeling of feeling so deeply confident. If you were to again describe it so succinctly in a sense of maybe you're just recognizing they bring in more enriching experiences in their life.
Good word.
It's coming forward for you. And so through that enriching experience, someone can again raise their hand to say, I have been like desiring more enriching experiences in my life. This is where I'm at. Can you help me? And you get to then assess and you get to kind of understand, can I, through my unique process, but you've built that belief behind this USP. Because I always just say, like, it always comes down not only, I know you personally have heard me say this, but like the beliefs of how we are choosing to like focus and build our concepts behind that and our clients, of course, too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Before we kind of get into your share, how are you feeling? Just to check in right now, how does everything feel for you?
Everything feels so much better. I was thinking about this all day, and I really appreciate you taking the time to really like question these things deeply, because I can get so lost in my own brain with these thoughts. And I feel like I definitely have a clearer picture than I did before we started.
Perfect. And like, even for you to kind of take away, it's like if you were to commit for like 90 days, even of honoring that time period for yourself, just because there's always so much that will come to the surface within 90 days. But what would that like position of a statement or like really that clarity in the who and where you're guiding someone through like that your marketing language? What would that look like for you? And what statement, for instance, would that look like for you to stand behind for 90 days? And you can constantly kind of revisit day in, day out to say, I know I'm clear. I'm choosing to be clear. And this is how I know I'm going to show up and share around this statement.
Yeah, that's a really good exercise. So you're saying for 90 days, kind of just like commit to getting clear on exactly who I'm serving and their transformation.
Exactly. So from today's call, whether it's like you need to kind of just digest a little bit more, integrate, allow things to maybe like some words just to kind of like wordsmith around, but really making that decision behind, okay, like this is exactly what I know to be clear. And this is how I'm going to constantly come back each and every day and build a belief behind this, that clients get this with me, but I also get to show up and know that I'm kind of like, again, quote unquote, that brand authority in this area.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a really good focus for me to have.
Well, I'm going to give you that. Is there anything else that you want to share that was most useful for you today outside of like the questions and just having this opportunity?
Just your energy is always so abundant and full of light, and I just appreciate you taking the time. It's really
well, I so appreciate you. It's always such a pleasure. And so with that, let's allow the audience to hear again if they are curious, if the words that you've used, the areas of which you can support them, calls to them, how can they find you and what do you have to offer?
Yeah, so feel free to find me on Instagram at Noa Ginsburg. I'm sure you'll link whatever it is because it's kind of a funny name. But I'm right now, I'm just offering one-on-one coaching. That's kind of where my heart is at. I love working one-on-one with women. And it's a 3-month container that you can embody all of these things that we've been talking about today, like feminine empowerment and inner healing and abundance work. And it's just what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I would love to hear from anyone who feels called to reach out.
Amazing. I'll have your links kind of included into the show notes. And thank you again for sharing your light here today.
Thank you so much, Mallory.
It's honestly such an honor to hold this space for the individuals that have been interested in receiving hot seat coaching and really putting themselves out there as well to be so vulnerable. There are so many different areas that we can look at in desires when you are building a business that you are really seeking to lean more deeply into. And that can look like this availability to think, decide, and execute on a much quicker basis with a lot more certainty and confidence in that process while you are starting to simplify your business model and your time for easier results. But most importantly, especially again, in initiating the process to not just take you to 100K, but to start to have sustainable recurring income each and every month, is this opportunity that we dive into for you to nail your niche, your offer, and your messaging to align with your best fit clients. So if this is something that you feel like you have been struggling with, if you need to simplify on a deeper basis to open up more time and to create a business model where you can also step away from your business and trust that it can still create revenue, where you feel like you want greater certainty, clarity, and confidence in the availability that you have to decide and execute in what it is that you're bringing forward without getting caught in the shiny object syndrome case of having to refine a website. Again, I always think about if you're not making 100K yet, you really want to be selling, and not avoiding doing the inner work. And this comes back into nailing that niche, your offer, and your messaging, both from a marketing standpoint, but also from contacting those that are here to work with you. Regardless of all of this that I've just shared, 2 opportunities right now are to come on board and enroll with me to work together and co-create, whether that's in a 1-to-1 6-month capacity, where you also receive Reiki certification of level 1 and level 2 through this duration of time, or my evergreen coaching and course accelerator, Frequency Business Mastery School. And if you're tuning into this before October 25th, there is an opportunity to join for a free masterclass where I will be sharing how to sign in the next 90 days clients that are best fit, again, for you, and learning the fundamentals in marketing while also sharing my 4-step energetic process into more of a feminine funnel. Feel free to access any of these and inquire further, whether it's DMing me on Instagram or hitting the links in bio through this episode, where you will also find Noa's contact information. Until next week, sending all my love.